Good afternoon or evening to everyone, depending on where you are beaming in from. My name is Janice Weiss, and I'm the Associate Dean and Director of the Environmental Law Program here at Lewis and Clark Law School. And we're delighted to be here speaking with those of you joining us in person here today. And then, of course, any of you who will be listening to this recording later. I want to say just a couple of things. You're going to be getting a lot of information in this webinar today, and do not hesitate to reach out with any questions that you might have after the webinar to any of the three of us panelists today. Each of you come to these programs with different backgrounds and different financial situations, and we're more than happy to set up a private meeting with you to answer questions about financing or the program in general, of course. So I'm going to introduce the other two panelists that you'll be hearing from today. With us also is Tess Jacobson. Tess is the Assistant Director for the Environmental Law Program here at Lewis and Clark, and she and I both work together to advise our LLMs and MSLs on various aspects of the programs. And our super guest star panelist with us here today is Kelsey Neussl. Kelsey is the Senior Assistant Director of our Financial Aid Office. She is an amazing wealth of knowledge about the financial aid process and financial questions and implications of pursuing these degrees. So we feel very fortunate to have Kelsey's input and information with us today. So thank you, Kelsey, for being with us. Before we jump into the nitty-gritty of some of the issues we'd like to address today, we thought it would be helpful to just outline the basics of the two types of advanced degrees that we offer. And some of you may be here for one or the other, and just to get everybody on the same page, we offer both an LLM and a Master of Studies of Law that we abbreviate MSL in the Environmental Law Program. We offer these degrees in person here on our campus and, of course, online, which can be very convenient if you can't come to Portland for job, family, other obligations. So the LLM program is a post-JD or LLB degree. And an LLM is the degree for those who already have that basic law degree and who want to advance, enhance, or move into an entirely new specialty in their legal practice. You don't need to be a member of the bar to join our LLM program, although we certainly have folks who've been practicing law for years and, of course, have a bar license, but it's not required. The second degree that we offer is the MSL, the Master in Study of Law, and that is for students who already have a bachelor's degree, college degree equivalent. And this is for folks who don't want to go to law school, don't necessarily want to be a lawyer, but who would find knowledge of environmental law and policy useful in their professional development. And so we have lots of students who will be the legal liaison in a NGO that does environmental issues. We have MSLs who are journalists. We have MSLs who work in government. Really lots of different opportunities with that MSL degree. Because you're not pursuing the JD program, you don't have to take the LSAT. We also don't require any other graduate school test, such as the GRE. So that's just a little basic information about the two different degrees that we are talking about today. And with that, I will turn it over to Tess.
Thank you, Janice. I appreciate that. So welcome everybody. We're super excited to be here with you all today and to help you, figure out how to fund your advanced degree because we recognize that pursuing an advanced degree can be expensive, and that it can take a lot of time and energy to secure the financing for this degree. So we want to help you every step of the way. Many students find different funding sources, most of which we'll go over some form of them today. So hopefully you come out of this with a lot of good resources and a lot of tangible steps you can take to help fund this degree. Planning ahead is key to helping reduce that stress of financing and managing your debt effectively. And as Janice mentioned, we're always here to help. So we want to make this degree as affordable as possible for you, because, at the end of the day, we're all here to help the environment and hopefully help you get that degree as well. So a little bit about some of the institutional opportunities that we have here at Lewis and Clark. So when I say institutional, I mean Lewis and Clark Law School and some of the opportunities that we have. So I'll cover a little bit of a institutional, some external, and then Kelsey will really get into some of the information about federal aid and loans and different types of loans that you can pursue as well. So the first way that we try to make this as affordable as possible for a student is a pay per credit system. Well, actually, firstly, you are, as an online student, you get a discounted tuition rate to begin with, which is $1,696 per credit this academic year. That does adjust every year, so just keep that in mind. But the pay per credit system means that you are only paying for the amount of credits you are registered for each semester. So if you're only taking one 3-credit course that semester, you're only paying for 3 credits. You are, unlike a traditional tuition schedule, you're not paying a set tuition for that semester, no matter how many credits you take, within a range. You're paying only for the credits you are taking. So there's no wasted money there at all. You're able to maximize that. We also offer payment plans through the school. So the payment plans are going to be while you're in school, but they're divided up. It takes your total tuition costs for the semester and it divides it into 5 equal monthly payments throughout the semester. And this is available for fall and spring semesters. We do not offer the payment plans for summer school. So that's just something to keep in mind. We do have summer courses and summer tuition. I'm sure Kelsey will go into some of the other aid options that are available during the summer, but the payment plan is only for the fall and spring semesters. The great thing about that is it's interest-free. So it's unlike a loan or anything like that, you don't have to pay interest when you're making those 5 monthly payments, but there is a small enrollment fee. I believe this past year it was $40, so it's really not much at all to enroll in that payment plan if that works for you. We're also going to talk a little bit about the tuition awards. So the tuition awards, these are going to be something that is offered through the environmental law program, and it's awards based off of merit and need, and it's a percentage discount in your cost per credit of tuition. For example, if you receive a tuition award for 25%, you'll get this year, you'll get a $424 discount, so you'd only be paying $1,272 per credit instead of the $1,696. The tuition awards stay with you throughout the duration of the program, but we can adjust them if your life circumstances change. So a lot of our students are sometimes in the program for 2 or 3 years, while they're working and completing this degree, and things might happen. Life circumstances, family obligations, your work life might change. We're willing to adjust that tuition award based on your circumstances. If that happens during your time in the program, you just reach out to us and we'd reevaluate you based on that merit and need. Amounts vary depending on each individual, so that's going to change. I will say, we don't offer 100% tuition awards, so there's never a 100% discount in your tuition, but usually they're between 10 to 50% depending on the student. This does only apply to tuition, so that's something to keep in mind. It doesn't count towards any additional expenses like housing, books, transportation, health insurance. If you're an online student, none of that is necessarily required. You don't have to prove health insurance and things like that like you would if you're an in-person student, but your tuition award doesn't extend to those things. Super easy to apply. We have a short form to fill out that just kind of asks about the merit and need requirements. And you can get that form by reaching out to us or sending an email to one of these email addresses if you're an LLM or MSL student. And a little bit about some external opportunities. So external opportunities cover everything else basically besides our institutional opportunities like the paper credit and the tuition awards. One of the first places that I always recommend is government scholarships. Some governments, this can be state or country governments, might offer scholarships to people pursuing a higher education, a master's, either the LLM or the MSL. And this could be either if you live in the United States, you could be reaching out to your local state government or the federal government and seeing if they offer any kind of scholarships for people pursuing environmental, natural resources, or energy law, sustainability, those types of things. And it can also be foreign governments who are looking to send people to study in the United States. So some foreign governments will offer scholarships to students who are coming here to study or pursuing a US LLM or MSL degree as well. Checking local chambers of commerce or local government websites are always a good place to start. They'll usually have recommendation or pages that will talk about tuition funding, scholarships, things like that. Another resource is just grants or scholarships from public, private trusts and foundations. Grants and scholarships, the great thing about them is they do not need to be repaid. So this is money in your pocket, well, in your pocket, figuratively speaking. Usually it comes to the school and we distribute it first to your tuition and then it gets, and Kelsey, I'm sure we'll talk more about this, but it gets dispersed out to you once your tuition is paid. And I will say, any additional grants and scholarships you have, those just get stacked on top of your tuition award, essentially. So, just because you receive a grant or scholarship from another place doesn't mean that you're not going to get your tuition award if you applied for and were approved for one. Grants are typically based on need, and scholarships are usually based on merit. So that's one way to kind of distinguish them as you're looking for them in your Google search. Some of the foundations that we have had scholarship recipients from before or that we know provide scholarships for master's students is the Foundation for Natural Resources and Energy Law, the Rotary International, or Education USA. All of those are really great places to start. They have a lot of additional resources as well. And I know Kelsey's going to talk about some more resources too that are available. The other kind of big one is a Fulbright, International Student Scholarships. So these are great because they cover pretty much all of your expenses. It's very much depending on what you're approved for, what you are admitted for, because you apply for a Fulbright or as a Fulbright student, and then you apply to the schools that you're interested in, and then you work with the Fulbright institution to coordinate your scholarship with that. But that is active in 155 plus countries right now. And a key distinction is that you're going to be looking for the Fulbright International Student scholarships, not the Fulbright Scholars program. Fulbright Scholars is for usually people with a PhD who are doing research or teaching in a foreign country. Fulbright students come here for the master's program. This is available to both MSL and LLM students, so keep that in mind too. It is available for as long as you have a bachelor's degree or will be receiving a bachelor's degree by the time you would complete the Fulbright program. You can apply for that. Some more external opportunities, because there's just so many. A search engine, Google is my usually preferred to, Bing, whatever, but just search for environmental masters scholarships or grants or funding, and you will get this huge long list of results. There's a lot of programs that we aren't even going to touch on or scholarships available that we don't necessarily even know about, things like that. So usually, you can create a scholarship kind of portfolio and just adjust your application letter depending on which scholarship and submit it off to a bunch of different ones, making sure to tweak it for each one. But that can add up, especially for a program, with 26 credits. There's also possibilities for employer tuition assistance. So a lot of our MSL and LLM students are currently working, especially in our online program. The vast majority of them already have jobs, and some employers are willing to offer a reimbursement or a stipend for your continuing education, whether that's, maybe doing a match or providing you a certain amount of money every year or towards the program. The flexibility of the online program allows you to be enrolled in as many or as few credits as you're able to fit into your schedule. So that also means you can work during the program as well. So some students find that as another way to help fund the program, is they don't have to take off work or quit work in order to pursue this degree. They're able to keep working and funding their lifestyle without necessarily having to take out loans and things like that. We're going to discuss a little bit more too about some VA education benefits and some other loans that we are available as well. I'm just going to briefly mention the veteran benefits because these can get very confusing very fast. If you think you might be eligible or are eligible for one of these veterans programs that we offer at the law school, definitely reach out to us. Reach out to the VA to ensure that you're still eligible and what your eligibility might be, and we'll work with you to ensure that that is something that we're able to do as well. And I think that is most of what I was going to cover. I am now going to turn things over to Kelsey, who is going to go into a whole lot of detail. So if you're taking notes, this is the time to do it.
A lot of information very fast. Thank you, Tess. Thank you, Janice, for having me. It's always a pleasure to bring information to people who are considering this program, hopefully to preemptively answer some of your questions so you can go into this really informed about what's out there to help support you. So we're going to talk about federal student loans first. We'll touch on private student loans. And then just one thing before we move on to quickly about external scholarships. We are required to account for those if you're a federal financial aid recipient. So be sure if you win any of those outside awards, you just let us know. There's a page on our website about how to report those external resources to us so we can factor it into your aid package and offer you the proper amount of loan eligibility. Okay, so federal student loans. There's two types of federal student loans available to graduate level students. There's some similarities and some differences between the two of them, and we're going to talk about unsubsidized loans first. These are the better of the two options. So the federal direct unsubsidized loan, we often abbreviate it to unsub loan. It's non-need based. So although you have to file the FAFSA to be in consideration for this loan, there's no financial need component. We're not going to be adjusting the terms of the loan or the amount of the loan based on the information that you report on the FAFSA. So non-need based. It's also not credit qualified. So this is a guaranteed student loan. As long as you file the FAFSA, you meet all the basic eligibility criteria, we can offer this loan to you, assuming you haven't reached your borrowing limits. So nice that there's no additional criteria there. This loan has both an annual borrowing limit as well as a lifetime borrowing limit. So annually, we can offer up to $20,500 of unsubsidized loans per academic year. And aggregate, this would include undergraduate borrowing in both the federal direct subsidized loan program and the federal direct unsubsidized loan program, as well as those loans if you borrowed them for previous graduate degrees. Lifetime maximum for that borrowing is $138,500. If this is your first graduate level degree, you're probably fine on those limits. If you've borrowed for undergrad and borrowed for a JD program and you're coming back for an LLM, there's a better chance that you would be approaching this lifetime borrowing limit. If, as we're reviewing your FAFSA, if it seems like it's likely that you might reach that limit while you're here, we would often reach out, send you a courtesy notice to let you know, hey, we think you're going to run out at some point, just so it's on your radar and you're not surprised when, second year of your program, you get less than that $20,500 annual max. As the name indicates, this is an unsubsidized loan, so the government does not subsidize the interest that accrues, which means it starts accruing from the time it disperses to you and goes forward from there. Interest rates, we actually don't know what these will be for new loans that disperse on or after July 1 of 2025, but just for reference, it's currently 8.08%. It's fixed for the life of each individual loan, but as I just alluded to, the rates change every year, July 1st. So there's a chance you might have 3 different unsubsidized loans with 3 different rates, but each one would be fixed for the life of that loan. Federal student loans also have what's called an origination fee. For unsubsidized loans, it's about a 1% fee. So for every $100 that you borrow of this loan, you would receive about 99 on your student account, and that remaining $1 would be kept by the Department of Education to pay this origination fee. So it's automatically deducted off the top, no additional action needed to pay that fee. If we fast forward to loan repayment, at the point when you cease half-time enrollment, you get a 6-month automatic grace period on your unsubsidized loans. So no payments are required during that time. Interest is still accruing. You're welcome to start paying on the loan if you want to, but you're not required to until 6 months after you've ceased half-time enrollment, which is usually at the point of graduation. And then at that point, you'd be making regular monthly payments with your federal student loan servicer. Thank you. I was trying to click myself, but I don't have the controls. The next loan we'll talk about is the Federal Direct Graduate Plus Loan Program. We often abbreviate this to Grad Plus or just the Plus loan. It's another non-need-based loan. So yes, you have to follow the FAFSA, but the terms, the amount of the loan, the types of the loans, not having any correlation with the information on your FAFSA that's been reported. Key difference here, Grad Plus is credit qualified. Borrowers cannot have an adverse credit history. So that's definitely one big difference between the two programs. And we'll talk a little bit more about that credit criteria in a moment. Borrowing limits are set up differently for the Grad Plus program. So annually, there's a formula that determines how much maximum you can borrow in a Grad Plus loan. It's not a fixed dollar amount. So we take cost of attendance, which is a ceiling figure for financial aid eligibility, subtract off all of your other aid. That's maybe a tuition reduction award, that might be the unsubsidized loan eligibility, and whatever's left, whatever's not covered by something else, we can offer to you in Grad Plus loan eligibility. There's no lifetime borrowing limit on the Grad Plus loan. So if, let's say, for example, you've met your lifetime limit for unsub loans, we could offer you more Grad Plus in recognition of that, because there's no lifetime maximum on the Graduate Plus loan program. Grad Plus is also unsubsidized, so interest will be accruing from the time the loan first disperses. It's got a fixed interest rate like the unsub loan, but it's 1% higher, so 9.08 currently. We don't know for on or after 7/1, we don't know what that new rate's going to be. The fees are also higher on the Grad Plus loan. So just overall, this is a more expensive loan in addition to being credit qualified. The fee is about 4%. So for every $100 of Grad Plus that you borrow, you would receive about 96, and that remaining $4 would be kept by Department of Ed to pay this origination fee. Grad Plus loans don't have a grace period technically, but they have a 6-month post-enrollment deferment period, which pretty much functions the same way. So no payments are required during that time. Interest still accrues during that period, and it gives you a chance to kind of get your financial footing, figure out your loan repayment plan, get situated with your loan servicer before you have to start making those regular payments. Thank you. The application process for federal student loans is pretty straightforward. You need to just submit the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. This form is open now for 2025-26. You can file online at fafsa.gov. So if you plan to start the program in fall of 2025 or spring of 2026, this would be the form you'd want to submit to request consideration for the loan programs. Next year's form, we hope, will open on October 1st. There have been delays the last couple of years because the FAFSA was overhauled and there were some kinks that needed to be worked out. Hopefully that's all been taken care of, and this next year will be a smoother launch. So hopefully we'll be back to that October 1st normal application launch date. When you file the FAFSA, you're going to need what's called an FSA ID. This is basically a username, password, login credentials for the FAFSA website and other federal student aid websites. So if you haven't been to or accessed federal financial aid in several years, you might need to create this. In some cases, a spouse may also need to create this. So the FAFSA is going to look at what we call prior tax year. And if for that tax year, you were either married to somebody different than you're married to now, or you were single and you've since been married, the FAFSA is not going to be able to pull in together the information for you and your current spouse. So in that case, spouse also needs to create this login credential so they can be a contributor to your FAFSA application. So they need to set that up in order to fill out their portion of your aid application. In order for Lewis and Clark to have access to your FAFSA, you need to list our federal school code on the form. We're under Lewis and Clark College. That covers undergrad, grad, and our law schools. So you're not looking specifically for Lewis and Clark Law, but just Lewis and Clark College. And our school code is there 003197. So make sure to list us and sign and submit that FAFSA so we can download that into our system. Timing wise, our annual priority filing deadline is February 15th. So if you are applying to a program after that, like if you're applying now for a program that starts in the fall, we would just advise that you do your FAFSA at the same time you're applying for admission. That way, we have access to your information around the time a decision would be made about your admission status, and we could kind of move you through our pipeline as quickly as possible without there being too much lag in that process. A few things to keep in mind. Kind of piggybacking on what I just said there, you don't have to wait until you're admitted to a program to submit the FAFSA. These two things, they seem like they go together, but they're definitely separate application processes. So I would encourage you, again, as you're applying for admissions, go ahead and submit your FAFSA at the same time. So that step is complete and off your to-do list. You don't have to wait until you've received that decision letter. Also, as a graduate level student, you'll be considered independent for financial aid purposes. What that means is there's no parent data anywhere on your FAFSA. It's just information for you, and if you're married on the day that you file, information for your spouse as well. When we download FAFSAs into our system, they link to the appropriate student's record based on the Social Security number. So it's really important if you're planning to apply for financial aid that you do provide your Social Security number through the admissions process. So that can be kind of tagged on your student record and your FAFSA can get linked, and it doesn't kind of disappear into the ether there. And the FAFSA is a year-specific form, so be sure that you do reapply every year. As a current student, winter break is usually the ideal time to complete that task since you're between semesters and you've got a little bit more capacity to complete that to-do list. All right. The federal student loan programs do have some basic eligibility criteria. A few of them are listed here on the slide. So you need to have U.S. citizenship or be in an eligible non-citizen status. And you can read about what is considered eligible non-citizen status on the studentaid.gov website. If you've borrowed previous federal student loans, you can't be in default on those federal student loans. And then once you're enrolled in the program, you do need to make satisfactory academic progress, which we will be measuring once per year at the end of the academic year. Specifically for the loan programs, you do have to be enrolled at least half-time in degree applicable courses. So in the summer semester, that's just 2 credits. And then in fall and spring semesters, that's at least 3 credits of coursework in those terms. Now, the Grad Plus loan, as we mentioned earlier, it is credit qualified. So there's a separate application that you would submit if you chose to accept that loan and wanted to move forward with borrowing it. And the credit check's performed upon submission of that application. If the credit check comes back as declined, and the result is usually instantaneous. You usually know right away if the credit check can go through, if you've been approved or not. If you're not approved on your own, you do have a couple of avenues to move forward. If you know what the issue was and you've taken action to resolve it, and it's cleared up, there's no further problem, you can just document that situation for the Department of Education and appeal the decision, ask that they review it again. Or you can also obtain a credit-worthy endorser, somebody to sign on to that loan with you, so that they can determine you as a person who would be willing to be borrowed to or lended to. Since there is this credit component here, we do encourage everybody who's considering a graduate level program to look at your credit score beforehand, look at your credit history, check to make sure that there's nothing in there that requires your attention. It can take time to untangle issues related to your credit, so you want to just give yourself as much lead time as possible. If there's anything in there that you need to take action on, give yourself the benefit of more time rather than less time. And you can check your credit for free at annualcreditreport.com. All right, cost of attendance. This is a really important concept for financial aid. We've alluded to it once before. This is an estimate of all the things that you pay for as a student. So it's your direct costs, things that are going to appear on the bill from the college, as well as indirect costs that are just things that you have to pay for as human who is also a student. It is an estimate, so your actual costs could be higher or lower, either as a total figure or within each individual component. So you can see the slide, on the slide here, we've got the different components broken out. Tuition, that's your direct cost, which you're going to see on your student bill. Different tuition rates apply to our online students who are only online versus our students who are in person or doing a hybrid enrollment situation. We've got a food and housing allowance component, books and supplies allowance, transportation, personal expenses, and then loan fees. Because as we talked about a few minutes ago, both of those loans have fees attached to them. So we're able to give you a little bit more loan eligibility in recognition of that. As Tess said earlier, tuition does usually increase every summer at the start of the new academic year, and the other components of the budget are subject to change, although we've just recently surveyed and increased our budget. So I would expect them to stay the same at least for a couple of years. And this figure creates a limit on your financial aid eligibility. You're welcome to go ahead, Tess, thank you. It sets a ceiling for us on how much aid we can offer to you. So we're gonna look now at a sample budget, a sample cost of attendance budget, and then a sample financial aid offer for that budget. So in this hypothetical scenario, we're looking at an online student in the LLM program taking 7 credits online per semester in fall and spring. So a 9-month enrollment period, or about 30 weeks of enrollment, 2 semesters worth, and then 14 total credits. So we calculate that cost of attendance component by component. So we take our per credit tuition rate, multiply by the number of credits to get your tuition component. Food and housing, transportation, and personal, those are weekly allowances. So we say 30 weeks, multiply by those standard rates to get your allowances in those areas. And then books and supplies and loan fees are calculated based on how many semesters you're here. So 2 semesters worth of allowance for those. Total cost of attendance for this scenario would be $52,114. For that student who has that budget, a sample offer might look like what you see on the bottom of the screen here. So if they've been offered, let's say, a 35% tuition reduction award in the form of an online LLM Environmental Leadership Award, that's going to take off $83.10 of the tuition cost. And then unsubsidized loan eligibility, that's that $20,500 annual maximum for that loan program. And then the rest of that budget, the amount that's going to get us to our cost of attendance, is what we can offer to in Grad Plus eligibility. And again, Grad Plus is credit qualified. So this is the maximum you could access in a Plus loan if you choose to apply for it and if you're approved. So total cost of attendance, $52,114. Total aid offered, $52,114. All right, a few reminders related to financial aid. The amounts that you see on your aid offer for the loans, those are always the maximums. You definitely are not required to borrow everything offered to you. And we would say, borrow only what you need. The first step is often deciding, what is it that I actually need the loan funds for? Is that just the remaining balance of my tuition? Is that my tuition and my books? Is that tuition and books and living expenses? And then in that case, how much are those living expenses? How much am I going to need to support myself over this enrollment period? Then once you've identified that, kind of the goal, the amount that you're trying to cover with the loans, then you can work backwards and figure out, okay, how much do I need to borrow in order to receive that much? You're always going to have to borrow a little bit more because of the loan fees we talked about. So keep that in mind. You're going to want to round up just a little bit to account for loan fees, and maybe also to build in a little bit of cushion because things come up that you can't plan for. Always good to have a little bit of buffer in there. If you do decide to borrow from the loan programs, there's going to be processing steps to complete, all of which are done online. If you're starting in the fall semester, July 1 is the preferred deadline to complete all of those steps. If you're starting in the spring, it's maybe not quite that far in advance of the due date for that semester because it's a less busy time of year for us. But you're going to need to secure the loans by accepting the particular loans and telling us how much you want to borrow. You'll go through some counseling online. You'll sign master promissory notes, which are the promises to pay the loans back. And then if you wanted the PLUS loan, that's when you would submit the PLUS application as well. Loan disbursements are always set up to disperse the week before classes begin at the earliest. and it's going to flow through your student account. So the loans will be applied to charges first. If they overpay your charges, the excess amount is going to be refunded back to you. And that's the money you can use to pay the bookstore and the landlord in the grocery store. Refunds are sent either by paper check or direct deposit. We definitely would recommend direct deposit so you get access to that money as quickly as possible. And then you also don't have to worry about it getting mailed to the wrong address or that kind of thing. For those of you who are offered a tuition reduction award, obviously they are based on your tuition. So we have to make some assumptions about how many credits you'll take and what your tuition will be in order to calculate that award amount. So after add drop every semester, we do a check of enrollment. We look to see if there's anybody whose actual registration differs from what we assumed at the point when we calculated that award. And we will adjust and recalculate as needed to make sure it's still covering the correct percentage of your tuition cost. All right, that's all I think on the federal side of things. Private student loans we'll just touch on briefly. This is something that you would need to research on your own and apply for through a bank or a credit union or a private lender. There's some similarities here to the Grad Plus loan program, but also some big differences. So the amount that you can borrow in a private loan is calculated the same way as Grad Plus. We look at cost of attendance, we subtract all the other aid that's been accepted or processed, and whatever's left can be processed in a private loan. So it can't be stacked on top of a federal aid package as well. It would take the place of some of that Grad Plus and potentially unsubsidized loan eligibility. Like the PLUS loan, this is a credit qualified loan. The terms and conditions on your loan might vary depending on the results of your credit check. And it's possible you might be able to secure better terms on your loan if you apply with a cosigner who has a strong credit history. The interest rates on private student loans can be variable or fixed. So just make sure you're aware of which one it is you're signing up for if you choose to go this route. And keep in mind that there's just fewer flexibilities in the repayment phase for private student loans. On the federal side, there's the chance for forgiveness through public service loan forgiveness. There's income-driven repayment plans. There's options to postpone payments for forbearances or deferments. You're just going to find much less flexibility on the private side of things. So to the extent possible, we always encourage our students to go with federal student loans. If you're an international student, for example, those wouldn't be an option. So private student loans might be the only thing that's on the table in terms of borrowing for this graduate degree program. And in that case, there is some information on our website, more, how-tos, what things to ask about, how to compare between the different lenders, as well as a tool called Elm Select, which lists the lenders that our students have used in the past. So it's not a recommendation of who to borrow from, but just kind of a starting place so you have a sense of where to start looking if this is a route you choose to go on. So I think that's it for me for now. I'm going to hand it back over to Tess.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. That was a lot of information. So as everybody digests that and thinks about questions and what they would like, I'm going to talk a little bit more about, applying to the program if you haven't yet, kind of what the next steps in our program requirements overall. So we're talking about financing. So something to keep in mind is the number of credits required to complete the course, or complete the program. So we do require 26 credit hours. Most students take about 2 years, so you might see a tuition increase between your first year and your second year, but it's usually very small if there is a tuition increase, but multiplying the cost per credit by the number of credits will give you an idea of how much this program will cost you credit-wise throughout the entirety of it. International students will complete 28 credits for the LLM or 26 for the MSL. That additional 2 credits is because international LLM students will need to take the Introduction to U.S. Environmental Law and Legal Studies course, which I teach, which introduces you to U.S. law school classes, law school classrooms, a little bit into the U.S. legal system too, so you learn a little bit about our structure. So you're a bit prepared when you're entering these upper level law school courses. Some of our required courses, we do require administrative law for domestic US and MSL students, LLM and MSL students. It is not required for international students in either program, but it is strongly recommended because our environmental law is based on administrative law. You need to understand administrative law in order to exceed in US environmental law and many other environmental law laws there in other countries as well. For LLM student, for everybody, no matter if you're international, LLM, MSL, or domestic, you need to take a survey for environmental law course, which just is a overarching course that's 3 credits that talks about all the different areas of environmental law. It touches on a little bit of everything. It's a really great introduction course to environmental laws and regulations in the US. And then for LLM students, you also are required to take 2 semesters of emerging topics, which is taught by Janice. And that course is really great because it is all about what's currently happening in environmental law, which is a lot happening both on the world stage and in the US as well. So that class covers a lot of it. It changes every single semester. It's a 1 credit course each semester. So you just, so it's 2 credits that will be required to meet those graduation requirements, so 2 semesters. It's not required for MSL students, but many MSL students take it because it's a really great opportunity to learn about current happenings in environmental law. The final project for that course is a blog post that gets published on our website, and a lot of students reference that too later because they are a published author on our website then. Oh, sorry, one more night. 18 of the 26 credits that you take do have to be environmental law courses. So we do allow students to take up to 8 credits outside of the environmental law program. So some students may choose to take an animal law course, or maybe you're here on campus and you want to take a business law course or something like that to tie into what you're learning in environmental law. We do allow students to take a few credits outside of the environmental law program. You just have to make sure you meet those minimum requirements and required courses. If you haven't applied yet, I know some of the people on the call I think have applied, but fall classes begin on August 25th with our intro course beginning on August 11th. So we have an application deadline of July 15th. However, earlier is always better because otherwise Kelsey is rushing last minute to prepare all of your financial aid offers. So if you're able to get it in as early as possible, that's great. However, with the online program, July 15th is the priority deadline. For the online program or domestic students. International students, we have, for our in-person component, we've already passed that deadline, but for next year, that is April 1st for a fall start date. We do allow international LLM students to also start in the spring semester, which is January, and the deadline for that is early this fall. So you are welcome to apply for those programs if you have missed the fall start, or you're welcome to start in the online program. We have many students who start in our online program and then transition to the in-person program the following semester. Some of the application documents that we require, we have an online application, so just make sure to apply for whichever program that you are seeking, whether that's the MSL for those with a bachelor's degree or the LLM for those with a LLB or a JD or its equivalent. For both programs, we require a statement of interest. This doesn't have to be super long, maybe about a page or so, but it's just going to go into a little bit of your background, why you're interested in the program, and how you think this degree is going to be beneficial to you in your career and how you want to use this degree in your future endeavors. We also require a resume that outlines your education, your work experience, volunteer experience, things like that. It's always great to see that, hobbies and interests. I love reading people's resumes because we get such diverse backgrounds and it's great. And then transcripts. So for the LLM program, we require JD or LLB transcripts. For the MSL program, we just require your bachelor's degree. Unofficial is totally fine. There's no need to spend the additional money to get official transcripts until you are admitted and accepted and accept our offer into the program. Then we'll request your official transcripts. But for the purposes of the admissions process, unofficial transcripts is completely fine. And then we're going to look for 2 to 3 letters of recommendation. These letters should really demonstrate your capacity to be successful in a graduate level program. So getting them from, prior supervisors, coworkers, volunteer supervisors, professors, if you're a recent graduate from, a master's program or from a bachelor's program or from a law program. It's always great to see letters of recommendation that can speak to your ability to succeed in a classroom or your writing skills, your communication skills, are always great to see in letters of recommendation as well. So try to utilize your network of supervisors, coworkers, people like that in order to write your letters of recommendation. For our MSL applicants, we do also request a writing sample. This should be about 5 to 7 pages. Does not have to be environmental in nature. So if it's something you wrote for undergrad or possibly something you wrote for work, just something that can demonstrate your writing capabilities to the best of your, demonstrate the best of your writing abilities. There's a lot of writing in law school. You'll be doing a lot of writing, so it's important that you have at least the foundational skills. We'll teach you legal writing. We'll teach you how to write legal documents, but it's good to have that solid writing skills. And then for international students, we do ask for a TOEFL or an IELTS score. Or other evidence of English fluency. So if you attended a program that was taught fully in English for your LLB or a master's program that was taught fully in English, that could be sufficient. We might ask for something like a writing sample or something like that as well in order to demonstrate English fluency if you're not quite at the TOEFL or IELTS scores too. But feel free to reach out if you have any questions about any of that. I'm always happy to provide clarification or one-on-one support as well. A little bit about what we look for. So we've covered most of this already. You know, we're looking for either of our programs, we're looking for a strong academic record, strong analytical and writing skills. We're also looking for that genuine interest in environmental natural resources or energy law. I think this is the most important part. This is going to be really demonstrated probably mostly through your statement of interest, maybe a little bit in your resume, like in your work experience or volunteer experiences. But we have genuine interest in this field because you're going to be focusing on that for the next 2 to 3 years is really important. One thing to note for the LLM is actual bar membership is not required, so you do not need to be a barred attorney in order to apply or pursue the LLM. And again, if you have any questions, I am always happy to answer any of those. And I think we have a few resources here that Kelsey has put together for us. So I dropped a lot of these links in the chat. There also a lot are available online on our website as well. And then I'll turn it over to Janice. Feel free to drop any questions.
Thank you both. And Kelsey, what a wealth of knowledge and so well laid out and so thorough. I think that is an incredible resource for potential students. So thank you so much for that level of detail. That will be a terrific resource for folks. If you have any questions, those of you on the call, please put them in the chat. We are happy to answer them. I thought I would highlight just a couple of things and mention some of the frequently asked questions that we get. I'm going to tie these more to the financial aspects of the program since that's our theme. But if you have any questions that don't relate to finances, of course, we're happy to answer those as well. One thing that relates, of course, to this whole discussion is the return on investment in a degree. You've received a lot of information about how to finance either the MSL or the LLM. And so obviously a corollary question is, if I'm taking out loans or investing my own funds or taking a private loan, what's the return on investment in my career opportunities for these degrees? So we get that very sensible question asked a lot. And Tess and I are happy to talk with you about the various career paths that our graduates have taken. And we can sort of help align in the environmental field. Of course, there are 3 general job sectors that people go into. Private, which of course for LLMs could be a law firm or in-house counsel, or for MSLs could be working as a sustainability coordinator in a private company. Of course, government and federal government, state government. A lot of states have very, very active environmental departments and is a fruitful place. And then, of course, cities and counties have a lot of environmental issues as well. And then, of course, the NGO sector, the nonprofit sector. So our students come in often with a pretty clear idea of which of those sectors appeal to them. But a lot of them come in fairly open. You would probably want to get the best job, the one that's going to advance your career in a location that you'd be happy with. So being open about particular jobs is certainly an excellent way to pursue the program. Obviously, the pay differs depending on which sector, which organization, which agency. Um, but we can certainly walk anyone through that. And really more to the point on return on investment, particularly in our field where people feel pretty passionately about their careers and working on issues that really speak to them, is what kind of environmental work do you want to do? Do you want to be involved in court cases? Would you prefer transactional work? All of that factors into the what I consider the non-financial return on investment, job satisfaction. What really is gonna advance your personal and professional enjoyment. So I always want to mention that because we get a lot of questions about types of jobs. What do people do with these degrees? What are some general salary numbers? We can review any of that with any of you that are interested in. The other thing I want to emphasize, Tess mentioned this and Kelsey did as well. Um, the pay by credit system that we have for both of these degrees has proven very useful for budgeting purposes. Because if you have to take it relatively slow, you don't want a big income hit right away, you have the ability to do that. You have the ability to take the programs at your pace in a way that fits your other obligations, but that also fits your financial circumstances. A lot of programs have sort of set tuition bands and with not as much flexibility. So I think that's a nice way to control your own costs, depending on the credits that you take. And other people want to do the program relatively quickly. They're going to maximize their efforts in that way, and you can certainly do that as well. A couple of other things that I'll mention. We did mention this, but just so that you have this clearly in your minds, we have 3 start times. And that's another thing that's nice. Again, if you're thinking about finances, you can start in the fall. Tess mentioned our start date in August. You can start in the spring semester in January, and you can start in summer term. So that's a flexible aspect in terms of when will you feel ready? When are you ready to jump in and do that? You've got those 3 times to do that. The only other thing, the question that we get to, or the revelation that people have when they're thinking about the online programs in particular, is there are fewer costs in the online program that, you know, obviously the main reason to do an online program is it's convenient for you and your life. But you don't have to pay for parking here at Lewis and Clark. Tess mentioned we don't require health insurance proof or purchasing the ones that we offer here. You don't have a change in your rent or housing circumstances if assuming you're staying where you are. So those are little things, but they add up, right? They add up when you're looking at a whole package of expenses. And so several of our online students have said, "Oh, this is great. I'm paying for tuition and books, and you know, I still need support for other costs, as Kelsey has outlined. But those might already be steady in your current budget." So those are just some tidbits I wanted to add and frequently asked questions that we get. So if there are no questions, and I don't see any in the chat, am I missing any, Tess? Great. Okay.
No.
Great. So please reach out. Our contact information is here on this last slide. And we would be delighted to go over your personal and professional goals in seeking either of these degrees. and to discuss your financial options. And again, Kelsey, as you can tell, is a great resource for that as well. So we look forward to speaking to you, and thank you very much for joining us here live or listening to the recording later. And thanks again, Tess and Kelsey, for all the great info.